Never know what's going to happen from one minute to the next. I mean, you can either be very depressed about that or look at it philosophically that you may be down at this moment and great adversity may be sitting upon you. But through that great adversity, if you look around, the road is opening up.
Actually, the time I did that, the first time that you just saw, I went back there and went, what have I done? What came over me? Who am I?
Forrest Gump wasn't just a movie. It was an experience. Released in 1994, it became one of the most beloved films in Hollywood history, a story about innocence, love, and destiny that touched audiences worldwide. Tom Hanks won an Oscar for his unforgettable role. The film earned 6 Academy Awards, and to this day its lines are quoted by generations. But behind the magic of the film, behind the heartwarming story, there were hidden truths that some of the cast kept silent about for decades. And at the center of it all was Sally Field, the legendary actress who played Forrest's mother. Mrs. Gump. Sally Field's performance was short but unforgettable. With just a few lines, she gave Forrest wisdom and love that carried him through life. "Life is like a box of chocolates" became one of the most famous quotes in cinema history, and audiences couldn't imagine anyone else delivering it. But for Sally, the role was far more complicated than people ever realized. She was dealing with personal struggles, professional doubts, and an internal battle about whether she even wanted to take the role in the first place. For years, she stayed quiet, smiling in interviews, praising her co-stars and moving on with her career. But now, nearly 30 years after the film's release, Sally Field has finally decided to open up. In a shocking confession, she revealed the truth about Forrest Gump, the behind-the-scenes tensions, the doubts, and the personal pain that shaped her performance in ways no one could have guessed. Her confession not only changes how fans see the film, but also shines a light on the reality of Hollywood, a reality that often hides behind the glamour of red carpets and golden trophies. What could Sally Field possibly say after all these years that would shake the way we see such a beloved film? And why did she choose to speak out now at this point in her life? The answers are as emotional as they are surprising, and once you hear them, you'll never look at Forrest Gump the same way again. When Forrest Gump was being cast in the early 1990s, Sally Field was already a respected actress with 2 Academy Awards under her belt. She had proven herself in films like Norma Ray and Places in the Heart, and Hollywood knew she could bring depth to any role. But by the time Forrest Gump came along, Sally was facing an invisible wall, one that so many actresses encounter in the industry. Age. She was only in her late 40s when she was approached to play Mrs. Gump, Forrest's mother. But here's where the sting of Hollywood really shows. Sally was actually just 10 years older than Tom Hanks, who was cast as Forrest. To make the math work, she would need to play his mother with heavy makeup, aging techniques, and sheer acting skill. For Sally, this wasn't just another role, it was a brutal reminder of how quickly Hollywood labeled women as too old for leading roles. Even when they were barely middle-aged, behind the scenes, she wrestled with the decision. On one hand, it was a small role, almost a cameo compared to the rest of the story. On the other, it carried the weight of setting the emotional tone for the entire film. Mrs. Gump was the moral compass, the anchor who shaped Forrest's understanding of the world. Sally worried, would audiences believe her in this role? Would critics reduce her to a stereotype, the aging mother, despite her long career of complex, award-winning performances? In interviews at the time, she brushed off the questions with humor, even joking about how strange it felt to play the mother of an actor so close to her own age. But the truth, as she now admits, was that it hurt. It cut deep into her sense of worth as a woman and as an artist. For decades, she kept that hurt private, hiding it behind professionalism, and yet, despite her doubts, Sally Field poured everything she had into the role. She gave Mrs. Gump a tenderness, a grit, and a wisdom that couldn't be faked. When she delivered the now-famous lines, she wasn't just acting, she was speaking from her own heart. Shaped by years of personal struggle and resilience, it's only now, nearly 3 decades later, that she's finally admitted the truth. Playing Mrs. Gump was one of the hardest decisions of her career, not because of the acting challenge, but because of what it revealed about Hollywood's treatment of women. and about her own fears of fading away in an industry obsessed with youth. One of the most surprising truths about Forrest Gump is how close Sally Field and Tom Hanks already were before stepping onto that set. Their bond wasn't just professional, it went back years to another movie where their roles were, well, very different. In 1988, Sally played Tom's love interest in Punchline, a drama about struggling stand-up comedians. Just 6 years later, she would be cast as his mother. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. Sally later admitted that when she first heard the casting news, she laughed in disbelief. How could I possibly go from playing his romantic partner to playing his mother in less than a decade? But the producers and Tom himself believed she was the only actress who could bring Mrs. Gump's strength and warmth to life. For Sally, it was a moment of professional pride, but also a personal struggle. It forced her to confront Hollywood's double standard. Men could play leading roles for decades, while women were aged into maternal figures almost overnight. Still, Sally and Tom's real-life friendship became the secret ingredient that made their on-screen bond believable. They trusted each other, and that trust showed in every scene they shared. Tom once said in an interview that Sally's performance gave Forrest a foundation to stand on, both as a character and as an actor. He meant it. Her presence grounded him, allowing him to fully disappear into the role, but Sally has confessed something even deeper about those scenes. Playing Tom's mother wasn't just acting for her. It stirred something personal. At the time, she was navigating her own challenges as a single mother in real life, raising her children while balancing a demanding career. When she looked at Tom, she wasn't just seeing a co-star, she was channeling the love, the worry, and the fierce protectiveness she felt as a mother. Every word she spoke in the film carried pieces of her truth. That's why the line stuck. That's why audiences wept when she told Forrest that death is just part of life. That's why her box of chocolates speech became iconic. Because beneath the script, beneath the makeup, it was Sally Field, a woman, a mother, an actress fighting against time and stereotypes, pouring her soul into every word. For nearly 30 years, she kept quiet about how conflicted she really was in taking that role. How strange it felt to be boxed into motherhood roles at that stage of her career. But now, in her confession, she admits it openly. I loved playing Mrs. Gump, but I hated what it said about me as an actress in Hollywood. For decades, Sally Field stayed silent about what Forrest Gump really meant for her career. On the surface, the film was a triumph. It became a box office phenomenon. Critics praised her brief but unforgettable performance, and the role etched her name into one of the most beloved movies of all time. But inside, Sally was carrying a truth that she didn't share until much later. Playing Mrs. Gump wasn't just a role, it was a mirror, reflecting everything she feared about how Hollywood saw her. She confessed that when she was cast as Tom Hanks's mother at just 47, it felt like Hollywood was sending her a message. Your time as a leading lady is over. It wasn't about her talent. She had proven that over and over again. It was about age, about gender, about an industry that punished women for growing older while rewarding men with more gravitas. More leading roles, more opportunities. For Sally, the sting was sharp. Just 6 years earlier, she had been Tom's romantic partner in Punchline, and now, suddenly, she was deemed old enough to be his mother. This wasn't just her story. It was the story of countless women in Hollywood, forced into mother or grandmother roles while their male counterparts continued to headline. Major films well into their 50s and 60s, but Sally was too professional, too graceful, to let her bitterness show at the time. Instead, she channeled all that pain, all that frustration, into her performance, Mrs. Gump's wisdom, her resilience, her quiet strength. Those qualities weren't just in the script, they came from Sally's own life, from years of being underestimated and yet proving herself again and again. After the film's release, the industry praised her, but the offers didn't change. Hollywood still saw her as the aging mother, the background character, not the complex woman she truly was. For years, Sally struggled with that, even as she continued to take on meaningful projects. She admitted in her memoir that it wasn't until much later in her career, with roles in Brothers and Sisters and Lincoln, that she finally felt she was being taken seriously again. But her confession about Forrest Gump is what truly resonated. She revealed that while she loved the film and cherished the role, it also represented a turning point, the moment she realized Hollywood would never see her the same way again. And yet, instead of letting that break her, she turned it into fuel, proving again and again that she was more than just the roles she was offered. Now, 3 decades after Forrest Gump first premiered, Sally Field finally spoke her truth, and it stunned everyone. She admitted that while she poured her heart into Mrs. Gump, deep down it was painful to accept that Hollywood had pushed her into that corner. She said it was less about the role itself, which she was proud of, and more about what it symbolized, how quickly women in Hollywood are stripped of their prime, no matter how much talent or acclaim they carry. Her honesty struck a nerve, because it wasn't just her story. It was the story of an entire generation of women who watched their opportunities shrink the moment they hit middle age. What made Sally's confession so powerful was the timing. At 76, she no longer had to play by Hollywood's rules. She had nothing to prove, no roles to chase, no directors to please. For the first time, she could tell the world exactly how it felt to go from leading roles to the mother, almost overnight. And when she did, fans didn't turn away. They embraced her even more. Social media filled with messages of love, support, and outrage on her behalf. Viewers said they cried rewatching Forrest Gump, realizing the strength in her performance was also the strength of a woman fighting against an industry that didn't want her to shine. Sally herself admitted that, in hindsight, she wouldn't change a thing. Playing Mrs. Gump, despite the pain it caused, became one of the most meaningful roles of her career. She said it gave her the chance to show audiences that even in silence, even in limited screen time, an actor could deliver something unforgettable. Maybe they thought they were sidelining me, she confessed in one interview. But in the end, they gave me a role people will remember forever, and that's the legacy Sally Field carries today. Not just as Mrs. Gump, not just as a motherly figure, but as a fighter who dared to speak out when so many stay quiet. Her confession didn't just rewrite her own history with Forrest Gump, it forced fans and Hollywood itself to reckon with the way women have been treated for generations. After 30 years, Sally Field finally set the record straight, and in doing so, reminded the world why she has always been more than just the role she played.